Woman gives birth to a baby with 4 legs. How does this shocking true story affect her and the baby's life? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. It started as an ordinary day in the sleepy town of Willow Creek. The crisp morning air carried the scent of blooming lilacs, and the quiet hum of life rolled through its cobblestone streets. Claire Benton, 28 and 6 months pregnant, was rushing down Main Street, her hand protectively cradling her growing belly. A second-time mother, Claire was known for her warm smile and resilience, but lately, an unshakable tension shadowed her usually cheerful demeanor. Dr. Evelyn Harper, the town's only obstetrician, had called Claire in for an unscheduled ultrasound. The words "unusual developments" still echoed in Claire's ears, their ambiguity gnawing at her. Her husband, James, couldn't accompany her. His job at the steel factory was demanding, especially with layoffs looming. "Everything's probably fine," Claire whispered to herself as she entered the clinic, forcing a reassuring smile for the receptionist, Linda Marks, a sharp-tongued woman who loved to gossip. Linda gave her a sympathetic look, the kind that made Claire's stomach churn with unease. As she lay back on the examination table, cold gel smeared over her stomach, Claire focused on the rhythmic beeping of the ultrasound machine. Dr. Harper's face, usually calm and collected, faltered as she moved the transducer across Claire's abdomen. The doctor's lips tightened, her brow furrowing with every pass. "Is something wrong?" Claire finally asked, her voice trembling. Dr. Harper hesitated, glancing at the screen. "There's something unusual about the baby's development," she said cautiously. "It appears your baby may have a condition called polymelia." Claire's mind raced. "Polymelia? What does that mean?" "It means your baby has extra limbs," Dr. Harper explained, her voice steady but kind. "In this case, for legs." The air left the room. Claire felt a whirlwind of emotions: fear, confusion, disbelief. "For legs? How is that even possible?" Dr. Harper gently placed a hand on Claire's shoulder. "It's extremely rare, but it happens. Sometimes it's the result of incomplete separation during the development of twins. But it's too soon to say for sure. We'll need more tests." The news spread quickly in Willow Creek. By the time Claire returned home, whispers had already begun. The tight-knit community, while supportive in times of need, was also known for its flair for drama. Claire's mother-in-law, Ruth Benton, was the first to storm through the door that evening, her presence as domineering as ever. "I heard about the ultrasound," Ruth said bluntly, setting her handbag down with a thud. "You need to go to a specialist in the city." No offense to Dr. Harper, but this is beyond her. James, visibly exhausted from his long shift, looked up from the couch. "Mom, can we give Claire a minute to breathe?" But Ruth wasn't one to be silenced. "This isn't just about Claire. This affects the family, our name." Claire's face flushed with anger. "Our name? Ruth, this is my baby we're talking about, not a scandal for the Benton family." Tensions rose as the conversation devolved into a heated argument, with Ruth insisting on her version of damage control and Claire fighting for her autonomy. James found himself caught in the middle, torn between his wife and mother. Meanwhile, the town's residents had their own theories. Some blamed Claire's prenatal diet. Hadn't she been seen eating sushi at the county fair? Others whispered about a curse tied to the old Benton family land, a superstition dating back decades. Linda Marks, ever the instigator, took it upon herself to spread the most dramatic versions of the story, ensuring every grocery store aisle and cafe table buzzed with speculation. As the weeks went by, the pressure mounted. Claire and James decided to visit a renowned fetal medicine specialist in the city. Dr. Alan Griffith, a stoic man with decades of experience, conducted a series of advanced tests. The results were both clarifying and devastating. "This is a complex case," Dr. Griffith explained, showing Claire and James detailed images. "The baby's extra limbs appear functional but are fused with the pelvis. Surgical intervention after birth may be possible, but it carries significant risks." Claire's heart ached as she looked at the images. Despite the complications, she already loved this baby fiercely. James squeezed her hand, his silent support grounding her. But the complications didn't end there. At 7 months, Claire began experiencing severe pain and frequent contractions. Rushed to the hospital, she was diagnosed with preterm labor. Dr. Harper and her team worked tirelessly to stabilize her, but the threat of an early delivery loomed large. Family and friends filled the hospital waiting room, their personalities clashing under the stress. Ruth criticized the medical staff, convinced they weren't doing enough. Linda Marks, who somehow found her way into the room, muttered theories about divine intervention. Claire's best friend, Emily, a free-spirited artist, tried to lighten the mood with awkward jokes, only to be met with glares from Ruth. When Claire's condition stabilized, the tension shifted to the inevitable, preparing for the baby's arrival. The community rallied in unexpected ways. A local carpenter offered to build a custom crib to accommodate the baby's unique needs. Emily organized a fundraiser to cover medical expenses, while James worked extra shifts to save for the impending surgeries. As Claire approached her due date, she wrestled with an overwhelming mix of emotions. Fear of the unknown, hope for her child's future, and determination to face whatever came next kept her awake at night. And when the day finally arrived, it was nothing short of extraordinary. The day began with a storm, a fitting backdrop for what would become one of the most unforgettable events in Willow Creek's history. Lightning streaked across the sky, and the roar of thunder shook the windows of the Benton home as James scrambled to help Claire into the car. Her contractions had started in the early hours of the morning, sharp and relentless, leaving little doubt that their baby was on its way. "Just breathe, Claire," James urged, his voice shaky as he guided her into the passenger seat. "We'll be at the hospital in no time." But no time felt like an eternity on the winding roads leading to St. Mercy Hospital. Rain pounded against the windshield, and the tires skidded on slick pavement. Claire gripped the door handle, her breaths shallow and rapid, as James muttered a silent prayer under his breath. By the time they arrived, Dr. Harper and her team were already prepped and waiting. The sight of Claire being wheeled into the delivery room sent waves of anxiety rippling through the hospital staff. This wasn't going to be an ordinary birth, and everyone knew it. The operating room was a hive of activity. Bright lights reflected off sterile instruments, and the beeping of monitors filled the air. Dr. Harper, her usually calm demeanor replaced by a focused intensity, addressed her team. "We need to be ready for anything. The baby's condition is complex, and Claire's vitals are fluctuating. Let's move quickly but carefully." Claire was terrified but resolute. She locked eyes with James as he held her hand tightly, his face pale but determined. "We've got this," he whispered, though it was unclear whether he was reassuring her or himself. As the hours ticked by, the delivery became increasingly complicated. Claire's blood pressure spiked dangerously, and the baby's heart rate began to dip. Dr. Harper made the call for an emergency C-section, and within minutes, the room transformed into a controlled chaos. When the baby was finally delivered, the room fell silent. The cries that typically filled the air were absent, replaced by the hushed murmurs of the medical team. Claire craned her neck to see, tears streaming down her face. "What's wrong? Is my baby okay?" Dr. Harper, holding the newborn in her gloved hands, turned to Claire with a soft smile. "Your baby is alive, Claire. And she's beautiful." The infant's forelegs were immediately apparent, a striking and surreal sight. 2 tiny legs extended from her hips as expected, while 2 additional, smaller legs emerged from her lower abdomen. Despite the anomaly, she appeared otherwise healthy, her cries finally piercing the tense air. Claire and James were overwhelmed with emotion as the nurses placed their daughter in Claire's arms. "She's perfect," Claire whispered, her voice trembling as she kissed the baby's forehead. James nodded, unable to speak as tears streamed down his face. The hospital's neonatal team quickly took over, running a battery of tests to assess the baby's condition. The next few days were a blur for Claire and James, filled with consultations, procedures, and endless questions. The baby, whom they named Lily, became the center of attention not only for the medical staff but also for the media, who had caught wind of the extraordinary birth. The attention was overwhelming. Reporters camped outside the hospital, desperate for a glimpse of the family or a statement from Dr. Harper. News outlets ran sensational headlines like, "Miracle baby born with 4 legs," Medical marvel or genetic mystery? The once quiet life of the Benton family was turned upside down. Back in Willow Creek, the reactions were equally varied. Emily, ever the optimist, saw Lily as a symbol of resilience and beauty. Ruth, on the other hand, struggled to come to terms with the attention and what she saw as a stain on the family's reputation. She voiced her concerns loudly at every opportunity, much to Claire's frustration. "People will talk, Claire," Ruth said during one heated visit. "This will follow Lily her entire life. Do you understand what kind of burden that is?" "She's not a burden, Ruth," Claire shot back. "She's my daughter, and I'll fight for her with everything I have." The strain on the family deepened as decisions about Lily's future loomed. Dr. Griffith, who had traveled from the city to oversee Lily's care, laid out the options during a tense meeting. "Surgical removal of the extra limbs is possible," he explained, showing detailed diagrams. "But it's not without risks. There's a chance of complications, nerve damage, impaired mobility, or even life-threatening infections." James rubbed his temples, the weight of the decision pressing heavily on him. "What happens if we don't do the surgery?" "Without intervention, the extra limbs could cause strain on her spine and hips as she grows," Dr. Griffith replied. "It's not just about aesthetics, it's about her quality of life." The room fell silent as Claire and James grappled with the enormity of the choice before them. They wanted the best for Lily but were terrified of making the wrong decision. Meanwhile, the community's involvement grew more intense. A church group organized a prayer vigil for Lily, while a local activist started a social media campaign celebrating her uniqueness. Claire appreciated the support but found herself overwhelmed by the constant scrutiny. As the weeks turned into months, Lily's condition became a rallying point for debates about medical ethics, societal acceptance, and the pressures faced by families dealing with rare conditions. Claire and James found themselves at the center of a storm they never anticipated, their every move scrutinized and debated. But amidst the chaos, Lily continued to grow and thrive. Her extra limbs, though unconventional, didn't stop her from smiling, cooing, and wrapping her tiny fingers around her parents' hands. For Claire and James, those moments were a reminder of what truly mattered, the love they had for their daughter and the strength they found in each other. As Lily grew, so did the challenges, but they also discovered moments of hope and determination that kept them moving forward. At 4 months old, Lily had already become somewhat of a celebrity. People from across the country had reached out to offer support, while others, including prominent organizations, extended unsolicited advice and opinions on her future. In the middle of this media whirlwind, Claire and James remained fiercely protective of their daughter. They declined numerous interview requests and refused to let Lily's condition become fodder for public spectacle. However, their financial situation made it impossible to ignore the opportunities that arose. The medical bills were mounting, and James' extra shifts barely made a dent. One evening, as Claire rocked Lily to sleep in their small living room, James brought up the difficult topic. "We need help, Claire," he said, his voice heavy with guilt. "Dr. Griffith's team is talking about needing to run more tests, and the surgery, if we go through with it, will cost more than we've got saved." Claire sighed, stroking Lily's soft hair. "I know. I've been thinking about it too. But how do we decide what's worth it? Accepting help from strangers? Letting the world into our lives?" James knelt beside her, resting his hand on Lily's tiny leg, one of 4. "It's not about us anymore. It's about her. We can't let our pride keep us from giving her what she needs." The next day, they reluctantly agreed to participate in a documentary being produced by a medical research foundation. The project promised to focus on the medical and emotional journey rather than sensationalizing Lily's condition. Despite their misgivings, Claire and James hoped the exposure might help not just their family but also others facing similar rare conditions. Filming began in earnest, with a small crew following the family through hospital visits, consultations, and even quiet moments at home. At first, the intrusion felt unbearable, cameras capturing Claire's tears during a difficult conversation with Dr. Harper, or James' frustration after yet another 12-hour shift. But as the weeks went on, the crew became almost like family. Claire especially bonded with the director, Sophia, a soft-spoken woman with an empathetic heart. Sophia had her own story. She had lost a child years earlier due to a rare condition, and her personal connection to the subject gave her a unique understanding of what Claire and James were enduring. Over late-night cups of tea, Sophia shared her experiences, helping Claire feel less alone. "Sometimes," Sophia said one night, "the world feels too big and overwhelming. But what you're doing, fighting for Lily, sharing her story, it's making it smaller, more human." But not everyone viewed the documentary favorably. Ruth, ever the skeptic, was furious when she learned about it. "Why would you air your dirty laundry for the world to see?" she snapped during one particularly heated visit. "Do you really want Lily to grow up with this following her? People pointing, whispering, like she's some kind of sideshow?" Claire clenched her fists, her voice trembling with controlled anger. "It's not about that, Ruth. It's about awareness. It's about giving Lily the best chance. If you can't understand that, maybe you shouldn't be here." The confrontation left a rift in the family, with Ruth storming out and James caught in the middle yet again. Claire, exhausted from the constant battles, decided to focus solely on Lily and the decisions that lay ahead. By the time Lily was 8 months old, the decision about surgery could no longer be delayed. Dr. Griffith presented a detailed plan outlining the steps, risks, and expected outcomes. The surgery would involve multiple stages, each requiring precision and care to ensure Lily's safety. "We're confident in the team we've assembled," Dr. Griffith assured them during a final consultation. "But I won't lie to you, this will be one of the most challenging procedures we've ever undertaken." Claire and James spent sleepless nights weighing the options. Every decision felt like a gamble with their daughter's future, and the fear of losing her was a constant shadow. Claire found herself seeking comfort in unexpected places, including Emily, whose eccentric optimism had once grated on her nerves. "You know what I think?" Emily said one afternoon as they sat in the park, watching Lily wiggle in her stroller. "I think Lily's going to surprise everyone. She's got that spark, Claire. She's a fighter, just like her mom." It was the kind of encouragement Claire didn't realize she needed, and it gave her the strength to make the hardest decision of her life. "We'll do the surgery," she told Dr. Griffith during their next appointment, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "We'll give her the best chance we can." The weeks leading up to the surgery were a whirlwind of preparations, emotionally and physically. Claire and James found themselves clinging to each other more than ever, their bonds strengthened by the shared weight of their fears and hopes. Even Ruth, despite her earlier objections, softened her stance and offered to help in her own brusque way. The day of the surgery arrived with an eerie calm. The hospital's waiting room was filled with friends, family, and even members of the documentary crew, all holding their breath as Lily was wheeled into the operating room. Claire and James sat side by side, their hands tightly intertwined, as the hours stretched on. The operation lasted over 10 hours, each minute feeling like an eternity. Dr. Griffith and his team worked with painstaking precision, navigating the intricate network of nerves, blood vessels, and muscles to safely remove the extra limbs. Outside, the waiting room buzzed with quiet prayers, whispered conversations, and the occasional burst of nervous laughter. Finally, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Dr. Griffith emerged, his expression tired but triumphant. "She's stable," he announced, and the room erupted into relieved tears and hugs. The surgery was successful. "It'll take time for her to heal, but everything looks promising." For the first time in months, Claire felt a glimmer of hope. She and James were allowed to see Lily in the recovery room, where their tiny daughter lay peacefully, her body swaddled in soft blankets. The sight of her without the extra limbs was both heartbreaking and beautiful, a reminder of the journey they'd undertaken and the challenges still ahead. The days following the surgery were a delicate dance between hope and anxiety. Claire and James stayed by Lily's side around the clock, watching over her as she began the long process of healing. The once bustling hospital room was now quiet, save for the gentle hum of machines monitoring her progress. Claire would stroke Lily's cheek, whispering lullabies and promises of brighter days ahead, while James read stories aloud, his voice thick with emotion. Dr. Griffith checked in daily, carefully monitoring Lily's recovery. "She's doing remarkably well," he reassured them during one visit. "There's still a risk of infection, and her mobility will need to be closely assessed as she grows." but I'm optimistic. Optimism, however, wasn't something Claire allowed herself to fully embrace, not yet. Each time she looked at Lily's tiny, fragile form, she was reminded of how close they had come to losing her. The nights were the hardest, filled with the haunting what-ifs that refused to let her rest. What if they had made the wrong choice? What if complications arose in the coming weeks? What if Lily grew up resenting the decisions they had made on her behalf? Meanwhile, the world outside the hospital seemed to grow more intrusive by the day. News of Lily's surgery had sparked renewed interest from the media, and while the documentary crew maintained their promise of discretion, others were not so respectful. Claire's phone buzzed incessantly with calls and messages from journalists, bloggers, and even strangers claiming to have miracle cures for Lily's condition. One particularly disturbing moment came when Claire found a flyer taped to their car windshield. It was from a so-called healer who claimed Lily's condition was the result of divine punishment and offered to cleanse her spirit for an outrageous sum of money. Claire tore the flyer to shreds, her hands trembling with anger. James tried to shield her from the worst of it, but the strain was evident in his weary eyes and unshaven face. "People will always have opinions," he said one evening, wrapping his arms around her as they stood in the hospital's quiet courtyard. "But none of them matter. It's just us and Lily. That's all that counts." Claire nodded, leaning into him. "I know. It's so much. I feel like I'm carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders." "You don't have to carry it alone," James said softly. "We're in this together." As Lily's health improved, so did Claire and James' resolve. They began to make plans for life after the hospital, how to adapt their home for Lily's unique needs, how to navigate the challenges that lay ahead, and how to ensure their daughter grew up feeling loved and supported. But just as they began to find their footing, another unexpected complication arose. During a routine follow-up scan, Dr. Griffith noticed abnormalities in Lily's spine. While the surgery had been successful in removing the extra limbs, the underlying structural issues were more complex than initially thought. "This doesn't mean we've hit a dead end," Dr. Griffith explained during yet another tense meeting. "But it does mean Lily will likely need additional surgeries as she grows. We'll also need to start physical therapy as soon as she's able to ensure her mobility isn't compromised." Claire felt the familiar wave of dread wash over her. She had hoped the surgery would mark the end of their medical struggles, but it was clear the journey was far from over. James, ever the optimist, tried to focus on the silver lining. "She's here, Claire. She's alive. We'll handle whatever comes next, one step at a time." Back in Willow Creek, the community's support became a lifeline for the family. Emily continued to organize fundraisers, including a heartwarming art auction featuring pieces donated by local artists. Even Ruth, despite her earlier objections, surprised everyone by spearheading a bake sale that raised enough money to cover a month's worth of therapy sessions for Lily. "I still think you're too open about everything," Ruth admitted to Claire one afternoon as they worked side by side in the kitchen, assembling care packages for the hospital staff. "But I see now that you're doing what's best for her. And for that, I'm proud of you." Claire was taken aback by the admission but chose to accept it with grace. "Thank you, Ruth. That means a lot." As the months turned into a year, Lily's resilience became a source of inspiration not only for her family but also for the entire community. She defied every challenge thrown her way, giggling through physical therapy sessions and charming everyone she met with her bright, curious eyes. Claire and James often marveled at her strength, wondering how someone so small could possess such an indomitable spirit. But their journey wasn't without its setbacks. During one particularly grueling therapy session, Lily became inconsolable, her cries echoing through the room as the therapist gently manipulated her legs. Claire, unable to bear the sight of her daughter in pain, broke down in tears. "She's too little for this," Claire sobbed as James held her in his arms later that night. "How much more does she have to endure?" "She's stronger than we think," James replied, his voice steady. "And so are you." Their unwavering support for each other became the cornerstone of their lives. Together, they navigated the highs and lows, celebrating each milestone: Lily's first steps, her first word, "Mama," and her infectious laughter that filled their home with joy. By the time Lily's second birthday rolled around, The family had come full circle. The scars of their journey were still there, but so was an unshakable bond that had carried them through the darkest of times. The party was a modest affair, held in their backyard with close friends and family. Lily, dressed in a yellow sundress, toddled around on wobbly legs, her face lit up with delight as she opened her presents. As Claire watched her daughter blow out the candles on her cake, she felt a surge of gratitude unlike anything she'd ever experienced. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in years, she felt ready to face it, one step, one triumph, one moment of joy at a time. The years ahead were a mixture of triumphs and challenges, but one thing remained constant: Lily's determination and the love that surrounded her. By the time she was 4, she had undergone 2 more surgeries to correct the curvature in her spine and improve her mobility. Each procedure came with its own set of risks and recovery periods, but Lily faced them all with a bravery that left everyone in awe. Claire and James had also grown in ways they couldn't have imagined. The experience of raising Lily had deepened their bond and reshaped their perspectives on life. Claire, once overwhelmed by the opinions of others, had found her voice as an advocate not only for her daughter but for families navigating similar journeys. She began writing a blog, Life with Lily, where she chronicled their experiences, shared resources, and offered words of encouragement to parents around the world. The blog quickly gained traction, drawing readers from across the globe. Messages poured in from people thanking Claire for her honesty and vulnerability, many sharing their own stories of raising children with rare conditions. Claire found solace in this virtual community, realizing that she and Lily were not alone in their struggles. But not everyone welcomed the attention. Ruth, though softened over the years, still had her moments of disapproval. "Do you really need to put all of this out there for the world to see?" she asked during one visit, sipping her tea with a disapproving frown. "Isn't there such a thing as too much sharing?" Claire, now more confident in her choices, smiled calmly. "Maybe there is, Ruth. But if even one parent feels less alone because of what I share, then it's worth it." Despite Ruth's reservations, even she couldn't deny the positive impact the blog had on their lives. It connected Claire to medical experts, therapists, and advocacy groups that provided invaluable support for Lily's ongoing care. It also gave her an outlet to process the complex emotions that came with their journey. As Lily grew, her unique history became less of a defining feature and more of a part of her story. By the time she entered kindergarten, she was walking and running alongside her classmates, her laughter filling the playground as she chased butterflies and climbed jungle gyms. Though she still attended regular physical therapy sessions and checkups with Dr. Griffith, she approached each milestone with an infectious enthusiasm that inspired everyone around her. It wasn't long before Lily herself became aware of her differences. One afternoon, while coloring at the kitchen table, she looked up at Claire with a curious expression. "Mama, why do I have scars on my tummy and legs?" Claire paused, setting down the dish she was washing. This was a conversation she had been preparing for but still felt unready to face. She sat beside Lily, taking her small hand in hers. "You were born with something very special, sweetheart," she began gently. "You had extra legs when you were a baby, and the doctors helped you so you could grow strong and run and play just like you do now." Lily tilted her head, processing the information. "Extra legs? Like a spider?" Claire laughed softly. "Not exactly, my love. It made you unique. And you're still unique, just the way you are." Lily considered this for a moment before grinning. "So I'm like a superhero?" "Exactly," Claire said, her heart swelling with pride and relief. "You're my superhero." As Lily grew older, she embraced her story with a confidence that amazed even Claire and James. She often referred to her scars as her superhero marks and took pride in sharing her journey with others. Her openness and resilience became a source of strength for the entire family. By the time she was 10, Lily was an active participant in her care. She worked closely with her physical therapists, asking thoughtful questions and setting her own goals. She also began speaking at events with her mother, sharing their story and advocating for inclusivity and understanding. One particularly memorable moment came when Lily was invited to speak at a medical conference where Dr. Griffith was presenting his research on her case. Standing on the stage in front of hundreds of doctors, researchers, and students, Lily held the microphone with steady hands and a beaming smile. "Hi, I'm Lily," she began, her voice clear and confident. "When I was born, I had 4 legs. My parents and my doctors worked really hard to help me, and now I can do everything I want: run, jump, climb, and play soccer with my friends. I just want to say thank you to all the doctors who help kids like me. You're superheroes too." The audience erupted into applause, many wiping away tears. Claire and James watched from the front row, their hearts bursting with pride. Dr. Griffith, standing beside Lily on the stage, placed a hand on her shoulder and smiled. "I think you've taught us just as much as we've taught you, Lily." As the years passed, Lily continued to thrive, her story inspiring countless others. Claire's blog evolved into a non-profit organization that provided resources and support for families of children with rare conditions. James, who had once struggled to balance work and family life, found his calling as an advocate, using his experience to push for better policies and funding for pediatric healthcare. But no matter how far their journey took them, the Benton family always returned to their roots. Their home in Willow Creek remained a sanctuary, a place where laughter and love filled every corner. Emily, now a successful artist, often visited with her quirky gifts and endless stories. Even Ruth, softened by time and experience, became a doting grandmother, baking Lily's favorite cookies and attending her soccer games with enthusiasm. On Lily's 16th birthday, the family gathered in the backyard under a canopy of string lights. As the evening sky turned shades of orange and pink, Lily blew out her candles, surrounded by friends and family who had been part of her incredible journey. Claire watched her daughter with tears in her eyes, marveling at the strong, vibrant young woman she had become. The road they had traveled was anything but easy, but as she looked around at the love and joy that filled their lives, she knew it had all been worth it. The years rolled on, each one adding layers to Lily's already incredible story. By the time she turned 18, Lily had grown into a vibrant, determined young woman with an unshakable sense of self. Her scars, once a source of curiosity, had become symbols of her resilience and the extraordinary path she had walked, one she now embraced with pride. Graduating at the top of her high school class, Lily had become an advocate, a student leader, and a voice for those who often felt unseen. Her involvement in local and national campaigns for disability rights earned her recognition far beyond Willow Creek. And while she'd always dreamed of stepping out into the world, her heart remained deeply tied to the town and the family who had shaped her life. The evening of her graduation was one of celebration, but it was also tinged with nostalgia. Claire and James had spent weeks preparing for the backyard party, decorating every corner with balloons and pictures chronicling Lily's life, from the earliest days in the hospital to her first soccer game, and finally, her cap-and-gown senior portrait. Ruth, who had once resisted anything celebratory about Lily's uniqueness, now took on the role of proud grandmother with gusto, directing guests with trays of her famous lemon squares. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Lily stood on a makeshift stage, a microphone in hand. Friends, family, teachers, and even Dr. Griffith, who had flown in for the occasion, sat in rapt attention. "I wouldn't be here without every single one of you," Lily began, her voice steady but thick with emotion. "When I was born, the world saw me as something unusual, even strange. But my family, my mom, dad, grandma, and so many others, showed me that I was something extraordinary. They taught me to turn challenges into opportunities and to embrace every part of who I am." She paused, her eyes sweeping the crowd. "To Dr. Griffith and the medical team who worked tirelessly to give me a chance at a normal life, thank you. To my friends who've stood by me, even when things weren't easy, thank you. And to my parents, who've never let me doubt for a second that I could do anything, I love you more than words can say." The applause was deafening, and Claire felt tears streaming down her face. She reached for James's hand, their fingers intertwining as they watched their daughter, a young woman who had once been a fragile newborn fighting for her life, stand tall and confident, owning her story with grace and strength. But this was only the beginning. That fall, Lily packed her bags and left for college, determined to pursue a degree in biomedical engineering. Inspired by her own journey, She dreamed of designing advanced prosthetics and mobility aids for children with unique conditions. The day she left for school was bittersweet, the Benton home feeling quieter and emptier than ever. "You're going to change the world, Lily," Claire said as she hugged her daughter tightly before she boarded the bus. "But remember, no matter where you go, you'll always have a home here." "I know, Mom," Lily replied, smiling through her tears. "Everything I am, I owe to you and Dad. I'll make you proud." And she did. Over the years, Lily's work in college led to groundbreaking research and innovative designs that revolutionized pediatric healthcare. Her passion and determination caught the attention of organizations worldwide, and by the time she graduated, she was already a sought-after expert in her field. Meanwhile, Claire and James found new ways to channel their own energy. Claire's nonprofit organization flourished, providing grants, resources, and emotional support to families navigating life with rare medical conditions. James, now a community leader in Willow Creek, worked tirelessly to ensure no family in the town ever faced the struggles they once had. Ruth, in her later years, became a quiet but steadfast advocate in her own way. She would often tell anyone who'd listen, "My granddaughter was born with 4 legs and more courage than most people have in a lifetime. If she can thrive, so can anyone." The turning point for the Benton family came during a medical conference where Lily, now in her mid-20s, was invited to present her work. It was held in New York City, a far cry from the quiet streets of Willow Creek, and the event was attended by some of the brightest minds in science and medicine. As Lily took the stage to share her journey and the groundbreaking projects she was working on, Claire and James sat in the audience, their hearts swelling with pride. Dr. Griffith, now retired but still deeply involved in Lily's life, watched with a knowing smile. "My name is Lily Benton," she began, her voice carrying confidently across the vast auditorium. "I was born with 4 legs, and for a long time, people saw me as a medical anomaly. But thanks to my family, my doctors, and my community, I've learned that what makes us different is often what gives us our greatest strength." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the audience. "My work is about creating tools and solutions for kids who, like me, were told they were different. Because different isn't less, it's extraordinary. And if my journey has taught me anything, it's that with love, support, and determination, we can overcome anything." The standing ovation that followed lasted for minutes, but for Claire and James, the applause was just a backdrop to their overwhelming sense of gratitude. Their daughter had not only survived but thrived, turning her challenges into a beacon of hope for others. That night, as the family gathered for dinner in a small restaurant overlooking the city skyline, Lily raised her glass in a toast. "To Mom and Dad," she said, her eyes glistening. "You gave me everything I needed to become who I am today. I love you more than you'll ever know." "And to you, Lily," Claire replied, her voice thick with emotion. "You've taught us more about love, strength, and resilience than we ever thought possible. We're so proud of you." As they clinked glasses and laughed together, the years of struggle and heartache felt like distant memories, replaced by the enduring bond of a family who had faced the impossible and come out stronger on the other side.